In this module, we look at the recursive and iterative queries that go on between the DNS client and DNS server and DNS servers and other DNS servers in the DNS hierarchy. Earlier on, we've talked about domains, fully qualified domain names, and in the previous module, we identified that a client takes several steps when trying to resolve a name to an IP address. This focuses on the third step of that when we query DNS servers. For example, if we were to ping from the command prompt server1.beanlake.com, in order for that ping to be successful, we need to first resolve this to an IP address. So how does our computer do this? It walks the DNS hierarchy through its DNS servers with a series of recursive and iterative queries. Let's look at how this works in the paint pad here. I've drawn on the paint pad very simple DNS hierarchy with a root level namespace, com level namespace, and the BeanLake namespace. And in that namespace, there's a server called server1. Here is the DNS client. It has dialed up through an ISP. It's been automatically been configured with its DNS server. And when we ping server1.beanlake.com, we send a recursive query to that DNS server saying, what's the IP address of server1.beanlake.com? Well, the DNS server will check its DNS database, see if it's authoritative over that namespace, and if not, it will say, well, hang on a second, let me do a series of iterative queries of the name servers in the different levels of the DNS namespace. So what your local DNS server does on your behalf is it asks an iterative query, hey, what's the IP address of server1.beanlake.com? And the root level name servers respond, well, I'm not authoritative for that domain, but here are some NS records, some name server records of servers that are authoritative in the com level namespace. So your DNS server asks those servers, what's the IP address for server1.beanlake.com? The iterative query response is, well, the other day, this guy registered the domain name BeanLake in the com level namespace and provided the addresses of two name servers, which you're familiar with if you've ever registered a domain name on the internet. So here are the name server records for that domain space, for the servers that are authoritative. Your DNS server hits these name servers, asks the question, what's the IP address? In my DNS database, in my zone files, I've got a record for server 1. Here it is. So finally, the DNS server, your local DNS server, in response to the recursive query, sends you the response. Here is the IP address, 192.168.2.100. Now with the IP address in hand, computer-to-computer communication is possible. The recursive query says, give me the positive answer or give me a negative answer. Answer me one way or the other. The iterative queries say, give me your best response. You may not be able to do the job, but send me to where you think the best place to go is. So this is pass-fail. This is give me your best shot. That is how the recursive and iterative queries work, and it's how you find the IP address of whatever website you're trying to hit. And what's really amazing about this whole thing is it takes 5 minutes or so to explain, and it takes a matter of milliseconds for your computer to actually do.